What's up guys? Since Black Panther 2 is coming out shortly, or it might be out by the time you see this video, we're gonna rewatch 2019's Best Picture nominee, Black Panther on 4K Blu-ray. I also checked out the 4K Disney Plus stream and the movie on 3D Blu-ray. We're not gonna discuss how bad the movie is or good, I'm just gonna share some of my thoughts on the audio and video quality. So if you're into home theater and can appreciate a movie with good picture and sound quality, be sure to tap the subscribe button for new weekly videos. Now for some tech specs. The movie was shot in 3.4K and formatted for IMAX, so it was not shot with real IMAX cameras or real 3D cameras. It's got a 4K DI, it's rated PG-13, runtime is 134 minutes, and the aspect ratio is 239:1 on the 4K and 3D Blu-ray, and the Disney Plus version does have the full IMAX shots in 190:1, so no IMAX on 3D or 4K Blu-rays. And the audio is in Dolby Atmos. When I had originally reviewed the movie a few years back, I had some pretty good equipment, but I've since upgraded my audio and video gear, so I'm expecting a different experience. I've got a list of all the equipment that I use for this review down below in the video's description. And yes, I used a TV and a projector for this video. First, let's get into the Atmos mix. I originally scored the audio mix and gave it a 7, so let's see if it's better this time around. Jumping into the Atmos viewer, you can see that this is a static mix for the entire duration of the movie. It also does not put any activity into the wide channels, if you have any. Like I mentioned in my original review, I still feel that this mix lacks any real good dynamics, and the fact that you have to bump up the volume about 10 dB or so to get any real impact out of the movie should definitely tell you something. I also felt the surround movement or effects panning was sorely lacking as well, so when the ships would fly by or the cars would drive by, there wasn't a real distinct sensation of movement. There was a couple things I thought sounded pretty good, which I did take note of. The car getting blown up, you can hear some debris in the high channels, and you can hear when this tire is moving off to the back right speaker, so that's something. But for such a big action flick, I thought there would be a lot better panning between each speaker, especially in the third act when you've got ships and giant rhinos running in and out of frame. I still found high channel activity missing except for some light ambiance and musical extension. And again, for an action movie of this caliber, it's a real letdown. As for bass response, if you don't turn up the volume, the bass is not gonna hit. And even still, I found the explosion and the car chase scene to lack any hard-hitting impact, or anytime something's blowing up or getting destroyed, there just wasn't much tactile response. Now things do get better towards the end if your volume is turned up. The rhino running on the battlefield will vibrate your walls, and anytime that train is on screen, all 5 of my subwoofers would really pressurize my room. I also like the low-end response during the fight in Chapter 4. The amount of low bass in this part made it feel like there was a waterfall right outside my window. That being said, if you're watching the 3D version, that only comes with a 5.1 DTS HD mix.
One more word, and I will feed you to my children.
Now, one interesting thing I noticed when I compared the 4K Blu-ray to the Disney Plus version, the Blu-ray version has a static mix with 13 objects, while the Disney Plus version has 17 objects and is fully dynamic from start to finish. So there are 2 different Atmos mixes for this movie. Unfortunately, I didn't hear a difference between the two as far as surround movement or dynamics, and the volume level was the same on both. Although, I did feel at certain times the Disney Plus version was maybe a tad louder. If someone knows for sure, then leave a comment down below.
We will not have it. I said we will not have it, oh!
For video quality, let's start with the 3D first. I don't think it's as good as Thor Ragnarok, but it's pretty close. There's very clear layer separation without any crosstalk or ghosting that I noticed, and the picture was fairly bright overall. Some standout scenes I took note of was the shot that moves from the interior of the car out of the back window, which creates a window into your screen effect. So the depth worked really well here. Another similar shot is of Killmonger and Black Panther falling out into the vibranium cave. Pretty much any shot that takes place in the cave looks, well, cavernous. The detail was really good as well, and never made me wonder how much detail I was missing from the 4K versions. Overall, it's one of Marvel's best looking 3Ds. As for the 4K Blu-ray, there's some really good sharp scenes here and there that are really detailed. In fact, I felt they were so detailed it kind of took me out of the movie at times. Cause when you see how crisp and clean M'Baku's costume is, it looks like he took his outfit right off the rack at Spirit Halloween. I mean, him and his gang live in this icy mountainside cave, and their outfits look like they were freshly tailored. Now that's not a knock on the transfer, I'm just saying it makes the movie kind of feel like an elaborate cosplay. Aside from those moments of high detailed imagery, I found the image would fluctuate from really soft to a little bit better than 1080p Blu-ray. So at times when I'd go back and forth between the 4K and 3D, I didn't find it was that big of a difference. and I noticed this extra softness with landscape shots with heavy CGI. Now, the digital effects did work most of the time to blend live action with CG backdrops, but once we get into the final battle with Killmonger and T'Challa where everything is CG, it just looks laughably bad. As for the HDR, which is in Dolby Vision, the daytime scenes were bright and full of natural colors, if not a touch subdued, so they don't pop quite like they do in Thor Ragnarok or Guardians of the Galaxy. It still looks great in HDR and is a step above the 1080p transfer and a little more vibrant than the 3D version. As for the black levels, I felt they were somewhat muddy when I first reviewed the movie, but now that I've got a much brighter TV and projector, the very dark scene at the start of the film and many of the other dark scenes still crushes some detail, but it isn't as raised as I remembered. It's still not reference quality or even great. If the blacks were better, it would have elevated contrast and made the image pop more, cause as it is, it kinda looks flat at times. So I guess the question now is, should you watch the 4K Blu-ray or the Disney Plus stream if you want 4K? I think if you've got a 16:9 display, then I'd say go with the Disney Plus version because they don't look all that different. And you've got the expanded aspect ratio. Of course, if you've got a cinema-wide projection setup, then the 4K Blu-ray is going to be the way to go. I personally found the 3D version more engaging with the added depth and separation, so if you're a 3D fan, then this transfer is going to be the winner. And I'm going to keep my 3D score the same and go with a 9.5. With better, brighter displays, the 4K Blu-ray does indeed shine a little bit more. It's far from being in Best Picture contention, but it is better than the 7.8 I gave it originally, so I'm going to bump it up to an 8.2. The black levels are still lacking, but it's got a nice bright natural picture with some standout HDR scenes. Details hit and miss, and the final battle, still, I think, looks terrible. For audio, I originally gave it a 7 for its lack of dynamics, high frequency detail, sparse height channel activity, and underwhelming bass. Even with one of the best audio processors in the world, it still isn't going to make that much of a drastic impact on the quality. Now, I do think it's better than a 7, but not that much better, so I'm going to go with a 7.5. I think the biggest surprise is the fact that the Disney Plus version has a different Atmos mix. It still sounds as disappointing as the physical copy, but it is interesting that they're different. Well, those are my revised thoughts on Black Panther on 4K and 3D Blu-ray. Have you guys seen it, and are you looking forward to Black Panther 2? Also, which one do you think is better, the 4K Blu-ray or the IMAX Enhanced Disney Plus version? Leave your comment down below and let me know. Now, if you do want to grab this movie, I'll leave some links for it down below in the video's description. As always, guys, thanks for watching. If you want, you can follow us on social media. And if you want to support the channel and get exclusive content or great discounts on audio and video gear, then stop by our Patreon page. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you again in the next video.